Hey everybody, welcome back. This is the third video on the Blue Umbrella in our part 12 of the Manic Pixar Dream Girl series, presented by Earned Happy Endings, aka me, Lily Holman. So, we're going to talk about the city, and believe it or not, that will probably actually take a whole video just to talk about the city. This is an incredibly detailed film, and it's going to take some time to talk about, and that's great, because think of how awesomely powerful that is. It's a 7-minute video. It's a 7-minute movie. And it takes, like, almost an hour to talk about it. Talk about all its important details and all its important context, and just, wow. I'm sorry. I will stop fangirling and start talking to you like an academic. But that's what you're here for. Unless you have me on in the background. Which, hey, it's a viewer, and you'll learn a few things. Anyways, let's talk about the city. I love the city in this film. I love it almost more than the umbrellas. There are all these magical creatures behind the scenes making everything okay, and think of what a beautiful thought that is. It makes you see things in a different light, which is going to be funny because we're going to talk about the new lighting system. Anyways, okay, we're going to talk now. I promise. Alright. So, before the audience can experience the umbrella, however, the audience is introduced to the city, who is as important a character as the film's namesake. The first few shots of the film have no fantastical elements, and they just replicate the rush of a city with shots of people's feet quickly walking on sidewalks, cars moving past a traffic sign, and there's no music. Just the sound of the city, and everything is lit with neutral daylight. So this sequence was partly inspired by a project that director Sasha Unseld did before pitching the film when he went around San Francisco taking pictures of faces he saw in objects. So he imagined this hidden life of the city himself even before the film was made. It is fitting then that this sequence is actually the most realistic of the sequences, since it was inspired by a real city. So the shots are close enough that we can see the textured nature of the city and the various objects. It does not have the universal plastic sheen of other animated works. I'm sure you're familiar with it by this point. A lot of beautiful films have moved a little bit beyond it, but if you look at generic animated film these days, you see this kind of plastic sheen. It's partly why they wanted to work with toys in the first place when Pixar was first developing this look, because it looked more natural for them to have the plastic sheen. And it is also one of the reasons why it took till Toy Story 3 for them to have a fuzzy teddy bear. So, sidetrack! Anyways, so we don't have the plastic sheen, and it takes advantage of Pixar's new light system, which is called global illumination, and is very important, which Unseld says, quote, simulates what real light does, end quote, in that it, quote, bounces off the surfaces off the walls, end quote. So this light system is key for making the photorealist look work. Without the proper light, it would not actually look real. And so as director of photography, Jean-Claude Caloc explains, the baseline is a naturalism that's based off of the physics of light. End quote. So by replicating the real physics, the Blue Umbrella takes a huge leap beyond cartoons of the past. They are doing what was literally impossible before to create a live-action look while still not giving up their autonomy. And so with each object looking just as you would see it in natural light, it is that much easier to buy it as real. And so this is not the only cinematic strategy in this sequence, however. So each object that will be brought to life later is the static center of each shot. And that's going to be really important for pulling our focus. So the focus remains on the object as the people move past. We're not distracted by them, we're looking at the center of the screen, which is our anchor. And so the feet move so quickly that we can't focus on them. But like I said, we end up focusing on the static things. And so the camera remains still in order to ground the audience and keep the focus on each object. So it seems unusual to ask the audience to align with an inanimate object. Of course, this is a Pixar world, so we're a little more used to it than everybody else, but it's still unusual. But that is what these shots are doing, and they're doing it cinematically. So by focusing on these objects instead of the people, the filmmakers begin to foster a relationship between the viewer and these objects. And this, of course, will make more sense when they come to life. But think of how powerful that is. They're using cinematic devices to foster a relationship with a post office box, and we don't even know it. That it's just happening subconsciously based off of the way it's presented. Like, wow, that's so cool. So that sequence is a quick introduction to this brand new look for Pixar. There are no twists, just reality. So the filmmakers want to root us in the familiar at the same time as impressing us with their new ability to mimic live action. So what is being deliberately hidden from us, however, is the fact that everyday objects in the center of each shot are about to become the background characters for this story. So they're not just there to look pretty and real. They are there to be an active part of the saga of the Blue Umbrella. So after this introduction, the first minute and a half of the film is a montage of the entire city coming to life. The camera begins to move slightly in an attempt to mimic a documentary with a handheld style, and slight movements in the objects reveal that everything has a face, from the gutter to the mailbox to the walk signs to the awnings. Literally everything has a face, or they are presented in a way to make it seem like they have a face. So they are made up of the various shapes within city objects, and frequently the nuts and bolts that keep them together. So these are not faces like the umbrellas. They are not traditionally cartoony. And ideally, we could go outside and see the faces if we really looked. And they may not actually move, but the potential is there. So, Perkins says that, quote, the most obviously imaginative films, the pure works of man, cartoons and fantasies, lean heavily upon the cinema's realistic resources in order to make us see the impossible and believe the incredible, end quote. I love that quote. And it really highlights what we're doing here, because by using what is actually real, Unseld is laying the foundation for us to buy into his magical world and literally see the impossible life within these objects. I'm sorry to inform you that the post office box outside your house is not actually alive, but for 7 minutes we can believe that. So what brings them to life, however, within the world, other than our sheer desire for them to be alive, is the rain. And so they all look normal until the rain starts falling, and then they start to move. And they move within the boundaries of their functions as objects. So the gutter lets loose water, the post office box mail slot opens, etc. With the exception of their smiles. In order to smile, they bend their infrastructure. While this is similar to Red's Dream in that it signals magic afoot, it is different mainly because of the soundtrack. Each time something bends that does not normally, there's a loud creaking sound to indicate effort. The objects are bending themselves with the same noises and exertion that would be required if a human was bending them. So it just gives it that little bit more reality. Like, it's not the artist coming in, it's that they actually have the ability to manipulate themselves. And so if in this fantastical reality these things did come to life, that's all that needs to be fantastical. Everything else would be pretty understandable. So it's not effortless cartoon bending like Red. And it's important in order to establish the rules of the film. These may be magically sentient beings, but they are bound by their structure much like a human is. They are not superpowered objects. And so they have to they are limited to performing their function, and if they attempt to do anything beyond it, it takes a lot of extra effort. So with all these rules established, the focus shifts to the fact that the objects like the gutter and the awnings are especially excited about the rain as they open their mouths to catch the water. So it becomes less about establishing the rules and more about establishing the tone. So each object smiles at the inclement weather and takes joy in the opportunity to come to life. And their enthusiasm is hopefully contagious, and if you are like me, you revel in their joy as well. And so now that we are reveling in their joy and enjoying them and hoping hopefully looking for all our magically sentient background characters ourselves, let's take a break and talk about the umbrellas. I know, it's been 3 videos, and other than talking about their cartoonish faces, we haven't even talked about the umbrellas yet. So we will. Next video. Take a break and come back.